Alright, hello everyone, Simon here, and welcome back to our ARCHMINE100 series, and this is the first submission by one of the viewers. This is from Codbug, also known as Misa. If you're still working on the exercises, don't feel bad about how quickly Codbug finished. He's actually started this thing long before I even started uploading the videos, so he had a bit of a head start, so don't feel bad if it seems like he's managed to finish this thing a lot earlier than everybody else. But let's see what he's done here. This is the town map. Oh, that's pretty good. He managed to fit everything into the town map. Alright, so let's get out of here. So before we read what he has to say about his own designs, I just want to just walk through and get some preliminary impressions and then just kind of talk about what I think about just what I see here. So we have a giant dragon as the town statue, which is a dragon an animal? I guess it is. It's a fictional animal. I guess it counts. I guess we can let it count. So there's the town square. He's got very fancy roads, interesting patterns on the ground and everything. And it's very well integrated with the town square as well. You see the same materials there, the same patterns going through the roads and the town square. The shops, the colors exercise, the residences, there's the monument in the back. I believe it's a observatory. There's like telescopes in there. The temple appears to be vaguely Islamic. I don't know if it's what he meant, but we'll find out pretty soon. The mausoleum has a massive roof with a very interesting entrance. It would be interesting to see what happens inside there. Alright, so there's a circular staircase coming around here. Interesting. He's managed to incorporate the two roads and then center the staircase and the monument behind it. That's pretty interesting. And then over here there's the park. I'm just gonna fly over it first of all, but you can see there's different types of trees, I believe. There's like savanna trees and jungle trees and the what's it called? The deep forest. And there's some oaks down here, some flowers. So it appears he's adopted a kind of a plant collector approach and just collected different types of plants and separated the park into different areas that way. There's a few structures out here with a nice barbecue area, I believe, at the beach. That's pretty cool. Just as a first impression, it feels like the scale is a little bit different from what I managed to design, and it feels like there's a lot of work put onto the roofs of the buildings. Like you see, there's a very fancy roof there, and quite a fancy roof here. I mean, these are things that, I mean, I guess it's kind of subtle, but I don't know if you noticed this, but it feels like the proportions are slightly more cartoonish in Codbug's exercises than in my ones. And this is not a criticism, it's just a kind of an observation. I mean, there's nothing really wrong with cartoonish architecture, especially in a video game. Like, if it's a video game, so why not? But it's just that, from my perspective, because I studied architecture, I studied real-world architecture. So when I design things, just automatically I assume and I work in kind of real-world proportions and real-world assumptions where, for example, in the real world, roofs are not that important because people generally don't see the roof. Like, they're on the ground, they see the building, and they don't really see the roof very much. And so, I'll have proportions that make sense in the real world, and I have kind of really simple roofs because, from my education and my background, that makes sense. But maybe from a video game background, and especially in a game where you can fly, like we can here. So if you can fly, and if it's a video game, then maybe you should pay more attention to rooftops. So it's just one of these things that, I mean, it's not to say it's good or bad. It's just to kind of identify the things that are going on in my head that I don't even realize, and that's what's kind of useful. That's what's useful about seeing other people's work, is that sometimes you don't even realize that you're making certain decisions because you have certain assumptions about how architecture is. And when you kind of see other people's work, you kind of realize that you're actually making these assumptions, which may or may not be useful. I mean, it's arguable, whether or not the more cartoonish stuff is better. And also the colors too. I feel like this is more colorful than my world. I don't know if that's true. It's lighter colors. It's more pastel-y and things. Anyway, just a few kind of minor observations. Nothing that important, but it's always important. It's always kind of useful to be aware of your own bias, as it were, or your own assumptions, or the way you think. And sometimes the things that you do are not necessarily the only way of doing things. All right, so that's enough of that. Let's go on with reading. Wow, colors, cool. There's 47 pages. There's 50 pages in that one, and there's 50 pages. Oh no, there's only. Well, it's one of 50, but it goes to 20. So there's a lot of stuff to read, which is cool. So let's start with exercise 1, the town statue. So he says, for this exercise 1, I ended up going with a dragon perched atop a glowing sphere, which resembled different phases of the moon, depending on the angle you view it from. Really? I already knew before I started that I wanted a themed narrative for the town, and thought a mythological animal along with a moon would be a good transitional link between a superstitious past and a future that attempted to understand the nature of the universe. The sphere is constructed of colored glass, which was then filled with the lava to light it. The dragon itself was drawn as a rough side view silhouette in MS Paint, along with a top-down curved line, which was translated into a curved ribbon of blocks in Minecraft that from the side looked like a dragon's body. Then I added bulk to the body manually to give the dragon a more three-dimensional shape, adding legs and wings last. Attaching the dragon's legs to the sphere was a matter of eyeballing how the dragon's legs would have to bend to maintain a consistent appendage length between its body and the sphere, and took the most work to get looking just right. The wings are relatively simpler, symmetrical constructions. The statue's rear is to the temple, but its face is also facing in that direction, and it is distanced from the temple by height. I wanted it to be the first thing newcomers who came into the town saw, and given its proximity to the shore, the light from the moon could also double as a beacon. Alright, well that's a very thorough explanation. Let me just try and observe what he said. So depending on where you saw it from, it's the phases of the moon. So there's kind of like the dark color on one side and the light color on the other. I see what he means. So that's like the full moon. And then, that's like a half moon. And then there's like a new moon on the other side. I see what he means there. So he started off with a rough picture of a dragon, and then a spiral going down like that, I presume. Okay, there's the line. So there's the line of the middle of the dragon, and then I guess there's a line there, and then he drew this dragon like that, and then from the curvy line and the picture of the dragon from this angle, I believe, he filled in the bulk. And now that you mention it, it's a little bit awkward in some other directions. Like from this particular angle, but the dragon is completely facing the other way. It's a little bit weird, but at least the wings are still there and visible. So interestingly, from the left and the right of the dragon, it looks fairly impressive. Whereas from the front and the back, it looks a bit weird. Of course, it's always difficult to kind of design something this complex in 3D. And in a way, I call it the concept art syndrome. It's like when you draw concept art, the problem is that it's always 2D. And then when you build the thing in game, then the angle that matches the concept art looks really great because you drew the art. Whereas the angle that doesn't match the concept art looks kind of iffy because you didn't draw the art there. So the concept art syndrome is you end up with a thing in 3D that looks good from certain perspectives and not quite as good from other perspectives because of the fact that you drew a 2D picture and you base the thing on that. And it's quite common. It happens a lot in video games, and especially in a game like Skyrim where you can walk around everything. You'll notice that some cities look great from some angles and look pretty bad from other angles. So it's a pretty common problem that people run into, is that when you draw concept art, it looks great, but then when you build it in 3D, you realize that there's a lot of angles that you haven't considered. But this is pretty good. This is pretty good. I mean, it's not terrible. Not by a long shot, so that's pretty awesome. Pretty monochromatic though, the dragon. There's only one color. I wonder if... I mean, my elephant was also a single material, and it's easier that way. Did he use staircases? Are there slabs? There are slabs. Let's see, there are slabs and staircases. Alright, so this is that allows for some more detail in the shapes. Alright, that's pretty cool. It's also, it does dominate the skyline though, this dragon here. Like it's significantly bigger than everything else in the town. So it is like the most important thing in the town at the moment. Not sure if that's a good thing. It might be. It might be. I mean, if you say that it's important, then sure. He also made lights that actually turn on in the evenings and turn off in the mornings. It's kind of cool. So there's redstone stuff underneath the ground here. Let's see, where else can you see it from? You can see it from everywhere, basically, can't you? So, actually, it might be good. It might be good as a landmark because you can see it from everywhere in town. So no matter where you are, you can kind of identify your location in town, and that's one of the uses of landmarks, is just seeing where you are. And given that the dragon is facing a particular direction, if you can see the dragon, you can kind of locate yourself in relation to the dragon, and therefore locate yourself in relation to the center of town. So it's useful that way. So here we can see the dragon butt, and so we know it's we're at the other side of the city and all that. Alright, so that's pretty cool. It's a pretty impressive statue. It's a very impressive statue. Okay, so let's move on to the next exercise. I believe it's the shops, right? Let's see what he says. Exercise 2, shops. During the videos detailing the constructions of this exercise, I remember an outdoor eating area being hinted at for the restaurant when the furniture was being placed. I mean, it was an option, but you don't have to have it. The goal of which was to make the area feel more open. I attempted to do this without an outdoor area by making a large curved skylight in a light 60s diner color scheme to give it the illusion of it being more open without actually exposed to the elements. Having gone with the 60s color scheme for the restaurant, I decided to go with a 70s citrus theme for the market building. I at first had no idea what to make of the shelves that faced the street near where it was implied there would be walls. I hadn't even thought of display cases, so I instead put the walls behind them, set up an awning, and put out rugs where consignment vendors could sit or stand on to hawk their wares to passerbys on the street. That's good. That's also cool. I mean, I like that interpretation of it. The upstairs office was also a challenge, and I didn't want to move any of the furniture, so I made the office as tiny as was comfortably possible around the furniture, and added windows to it, preventing it from being too claustrophobic. With the extra space, I made a storage closet and toilet. Originally, this building also had a perfectly flat roof with skylights built into it. But as the rest of the city started to develop, and as one of the lectures mentioned the importance of drainage, I decided to slant my roof and skylights and to attempt to make a better draining roof, while also exposing more of the taller structures in the distance outside. Despite the limitations of making diagonal angles in Minecraft, I'm pretty happy with the feel of the results. Alright, so here we are. So the diner, yes, I did notice this. I did a quick walk around before I started recording. I did notice the diner theme here, and you can see the curved thing there. There's like a... I mean, even with the relatively small shape and the very limited kind of the blockiness of Minecraft, you can tell that there's a diner thing going on, which is kind of amazing, and especially the color scheme and the curved window here. It's a very American sort of a American 60s sort of a feel to the architecture, which is pretty cool. And the spaces work pretty well, I think. Let's see, there's lights up there. I think Codbug did a really good job with kind of choosing these colors. They work very well, and they do exactly what is intended, which is to convey the theme of what's going on here. So here's the market. So he's turned these shelves into kind of like an outdoor shops and outdoor displays, which is great. Which is one way of doing it. I mean, of course, the exercise, if you remember, was to kind of build the structure around the furniture, and so you need to interpret the furniture in a way that makes sense. So the interior, he said that he had a flat roof with skylights, but then later changed it to the sloping roofs. I think the slope works better. I think it does. You know, it seems to it makes more sense to have the sloping glass up there, and it is quite impressive having that sloping glass like that. Shops here are fairly standard. I think it widened the road a little bit. There seems to be very little space right here, but maybe that's my fault more than his because I chose where to put these things. Anyway, so your set upstairs was a little bit difficult because you had to fit this tiny office in here, although, you know, given still I think it works pretty well. And there's like a tiny bathroom. Although, you know, everything in Minecraft is too big, so it's not really that tiny. And a little storage room there. Maybe we need some lights up here. Maybe some of these should be lights anyway. So the color scheme, he changed the floor, right? Yeah, so it used to be well, this timber, I believe. He changed it to these colors. Interesting. So he uses patterns on the floor to differentiate between the spaces. That's a fairly clever way of doing things. And of course, there's the entryway there. Let's see what it looks like from the outside. And try to imagine the flat roof as well. Like, why did he change it? I mean, if it was like a flat roof, then it would look just like any of the like the box retail stores that you see in America a lot, where it's just, you know, a big car park and then a box, and then it's just kind of a shop. Like the supermarkets and the these modern boxy shops that don't look very good and then don't contribute very much architectural value to the city, but they're cheap to build, and so that's why they do it. So it escapes that boxiness which you see a lot, you know, in kind of budget shops and supermarkets. And the sloping is actually kind of stylish. I like it. I do like it, and I can see how, yeah, it would have been quite boxy otherwise. Alright, so I think this turned out pretty well. Certainly accomplished everything he was asked to do in the exercises. Alright, what's next? The next one is the temple, right? So this is his temple here. He's put these pavilion things around the town square, which, I mean, makes the roads more interesting. I'm not sure what it does to the temple though, because it seems to block the temple a little bit. It seems like there's like a massive thing just in front of the front door here. Anyway, let's see what he says about the temple. 3 exercise temple. For this exercise, the inspiration for the look of the building from the outside is inspired by Middle Eastern mosques. Yeah, so it is Islamic. However, the interiors were completely from my head. I wanted to promote the temple as a building not so much for worship, but for social gathering. Okay, so let's call it like a community center. The main hall is elevated with a small but open area for gathering, while off to the sides there are lowered ceilings and mats on the floor for meditation or silent reflection. The ground floor of the temple may have once been for baptismal rituals, but is now used as more of a public bath with changing rooms on the side. After the example of the exercise was posted, I realized I probably could have made a better attempt at tying the different door sizes and ceiling heights together to create more drama. But all subsequent attempts to rebuild the temple I was never as happy with. The closest I got was a Minoan-style temple, but I found myself constantly running into the problem of not having enough space to do what I want, to do what I would have liked to do. It is, like the temple, I didn't give you that much space. I didn't really expect it to be that complicated. So ultimately, I just reverted to the save with the original design. The shape did have a bonus of lining up with the road and square architecture when exiting the market through exiting the market side street though. Hold on, what is this? The shape did have a bonus of lining up with the road and square architecture when exiting the market side street. So, okay, I think what he means is this particular temple lines up, exactly with the with that there, which is good. So, somewhat Middle Eastern inspired, but not really a mosque on the inside, more just a gathering area. So, low lighting for the meditative space, and the use of the columns to kind of allow you to see outside, but also close the area off. Is that meant to be like that? I don't think it is. So you can see there's like a central area which is kind of a lighter, more open and more colorful. And then the side areas that are smaller and darker and more meditative, exactly as he says. And he's right, there's not too much space here, is there? And then underneath, he talks about a bit of water and changing rooms, apparently. So like a bath. Public baths are not that common in the Western world and in the modern world. But back in the old days, especially back in the Roman days, when you didn't really have water piped to homes, and for a long time you didn't have plumbing to the home, and so you kind of have to get water from elsewhere. And then in ancient Rome, having a public bath is actually quite a luxury for the city, because there's like kind of hot and cold water, and there's kind of baths and all that sort of stuff. So instead of having a bath in your own home, because there's no running water in the home, they had at least running water in the bath, and so that was pretty good for hygiene and social gatherings and all that. These days, I mean, it seems a bit weird for a lot of strangers to bath together, but you remember, back then, as I said, there's no baths at home, and so at least you have hygiene, right? Alright, so there's that. As he says, it's kind of well, on the one hand, yes, there's not much space. On the other hand, he did spend some space like this, where it doesn't actually do anything. So instead of building right up to the edge, he's left some kind of corners here. And maybe that contributes to the lack of space on the inside. I know it does, make the exterior more interesting than just a straight rectangle, but every single block you use up doing this sort of stuff means one less block on the inside for the interior space, right? So maybe that's kind of the reason why he ran out of space, maybe? Maybe I'm talking like this? Anyway, nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. He chose to do this, and let's see, this doorway and the ceiling height like this, so this is like 3 blocks up. And then up here, there's obviously the giant front door, and then this is like 4 blocks up. He did mention that maybe he could have made more of the contrast between the different spaces, and so like this 4-block space feels not that different from this 3-block space underneath here. Like they're both low and relatively dark. Anyway, doesn't really matter too much. He has shown that he's got the basic idea right, which is the main double height space in here, and so on and so forth. And going back to the idea of fancy roofs, like up here, this is actually really complicated. Look at this. There's like windows, and then there's like these kind of fences, and then there's gold blocks, and then there's lapis, and then there's like a skylight. Like this is really complicated, and you never really see it because it's all the way up there. Well, I mean, you can kind of see it, but there's a lot of complexity here that you really only appreciate if you're actually here, but you can't get up here unless you fly. And so, earlier on I mentioned about how the roofs in this town seems to be quite elaborate, which is a thing that is uncommon in the real world, because if you just walk around, you don't really get to appreciate the roofs all that much. Again, not a big deal, just something that is interesting to think about. Maybe when you kind of design your own things. I mean, it's not it's partly because the site is so small. It's partly because I made the exercise so small. I mean, if I made the exercise much bigger, and real life temples tend to be much bigger, then you can imagine if this thing was like, I don't know, at least twice as big, then you could just make a staircase going up to the roof, and then you can appreciate the roof up close. You can do that if there was space. I mean, there's no space to put a staircase in here, and that's the only reason why there isn't one, right? So it's not really a problem. It's just that these are the constraints of the design, right? Okay, let's move on. So next we have exercise 4, color. People who have known me in reality have described me as having an obsession when it comes to color and EM spectrum physics. So that EM is electromagnetic spectrum physics. So I apologize in advance for how long this section will probably end up. Alright, that's fine. Before I started this exercise, I decided to go with a theme that would allow me to fit in as broad of a range of color schemes as I could. In line with the science theme of the town, I went with the classical Greek elements of alchemy, which was a precursor to modern chemistry. The two buildings are divided into hot, fire and air, and cool, water and earth color schemes. Further, tiled areas in the kitchen and bathroom represent the difference between wet, water and air, and dry, fire and earth elements. The bedroom at the top of the stairs is designated as an adult master bedroom, with the room at the end of the hall as a child's room. The implication being that the child's room might take more creative risks than the more tame styles of the adult bedrooms. Each apartment was designed as follows. The fire apartment makes use of intense warm colors and high contrast. This apartment would be ideal for people who love to entertain or throw parties, fiestas. The adult bedroom is also a bit spicier than those of the other apartments. While the child's room is largely warm, with the contrast taken to the limit with opposing complementary colors. The air apartment is also fairly high contrast, but with more muted desert-like tones. It's aimed at intellectuals and fosters a calm but challenging study environment. The adult bedroom is a muted contrast of dark and light to be a modern minimalist environment, while the child's bedroom fully embraces the air theme by depicting the sky and clouds on the walls. The water apartment is definitely the coldest and darkest and attempts to ride a fine line between serenity and gloom. It's primarily aimed at loners and those with a calm, quiet, possibly unstable quality about them. Wait a minute, how can they be calm and unstable at the same time? Never mind. The adult bedroom sticks to cool, dark colors like purple to embrace the depressive side, while the child's bedroom embraces mania within the same main hue, replacing purple with magenta but with more clashing, but complementary colors. The earth apartment is the most homey or cozy, with an almost den-like quality to it. It is best suited to those with a simple or more conservative mindset. The adult bedroom is about as conservative as you can get, resembling the generic earthy color scheme of many motel rooms. The children's bedroom takes a bit more risk, but not by much, sticking to basic muted versions of primary colors. As an artist, this exercise to me was one of the most enjoyable and relaxing ones to do. Alright, so Codbug clearly is comfortable with colors, and he knows his color theory, and he's having a pretty good time doing these. Alright, so let's see if we can identify these ones. So obviously this is the warm one, and that's the cool one, right? Because that's like the red, and that's like the blue. So let's go inside and see how we do. Oh, he made signs for them. Damn it! Don't have to make it that obvious. Jeez. Alright, well, never mind. We're not guessing anything. This is the fire. Wow, look at these colors. So this is a really hot and spicy kind of a space. I mean, it's not really my personality, but imagine a house like this. Imagine a house with these colors. Like most houses, I said back when I kind of worked on the exercises that these days most houses have very neutral colors because they don't know who they're selling to. So they build the house and then they find a buyer, and so they're not designing it for a specific person. They're trying to design it so that it works for many people, and so they use these kind of neutral colors. And then if the buyer wants to change anything, they can kind of put up their own decorations to spice things up. So you don't see this sort of kind of brave color scheme in the real world all that much, because you know, the real estate people aren't that brave. Just you know. So unless you'd kind of choose to paint your own home, then you won't see this sort of thing all that much. Wow, look how look how bright this is. Like imagine you're lying down, you're looking at this, and you're trying to sleep. I guess it works for some people. Maybe it works for some people. There's a lot going on though. All right, let's see what's going on in the bedroom. Oh, this is interesting. Very pink. Interesting. Very interesting. Reminds me of I don't remember the specific house. Actually, let me just try and Google this. Let me try and Google a pink house. No, this is not what I want. There's one architect. I think it's a South American architect who likes using bright colors. Anyway, if you type pink house into Google, you'll find pink houses anyway. Never mind. All right, let's just go back to this. This reminds me of one of those buildings where it's kind of bright salmon color, if I remember right, and it's kind of amazing because just you know the whole courtyard is just this kind of bright color, and you know it doesn't happen very often, but when someone is brave enough to do it, it's very impressive and kind of amazing. Was it salmon or was it actually flamingo pink? Anyway, never mind. I don't remember the reference. If anybody knows what I'm talking about, they can type it in the into the comments. This is the air apartment. So we have this kind of nice golden hue on the ground, and then this kind of sky-like color scheme on the walls. Significantly calmer than the previous apartment. Very light and airy, so I think this is probably more sellable. I mean, if you're a real estate agent trying to convince somebody to buy your house, this might work better than the previous one. But, you know, it's not quite as brave, not quite as exciting. Interesting. There's like, so as you said, there's literally clouds. Wait a minute, what's going on there? There's literally clouds in the room. Nice. I think this is better. I mean, sometimes you want the environment to be more calming because you don't want people to get too excited. Excitement is risky. Alright, so let's go to the water one. He calls this depressing. I don't know, it seems okay. Maybe it's just my personality. I think this seems pretty okay to me. I mean, there's the green and the... So this vaguely sandy sort of clay is like a... It's an interesting texture, isn't it? It's got more texture than the colored clay for sure. Kind of like this texture, especially the way he's used it on the ceiling and at the base there. It's like a pebble beach. Have you been to a pebble beach? Like, you know, some beaches are sand, some beaches are pebbles, and it's kind of like it's the sea breeze and the pebble beach, and maybe it's a little bit cold, and maybe some people call that depressing. I don't know. I like that sort of environment. Actually, where would you find stuff like that? Maybe on the northwest coast of America, like Seattle, like around Washington State. I don't know, I like that sort of thing. Washington State is very wet, there's a lot of rain. So maybe it is depressing. Okay, let's see the bathroom. Alright, cool. And then upstairs we have... There's a lot of green up here. Let's see this. Ooh, this is interesting. I mean... The deep purple... Purple is passion, right? Purple is a color of passion. Is that what it usually means? The deep purple is interesting. Interesting. I think I like this. I think I like this the most myself. I guess that says a lot about my personality, right? This is very bright. bright colors. Alright, well, so, as he says, each apartment has a different theme, a different element, or, the old Greek elements. So the earth, he says, is probably the most conservative, although the green is still a bit daring from a real estate agent point of view, I think. Although you might think that green is just a color that everybody likes. Still, this is quite an intense green to put on the walls. Wait a minute, is this the same as the other one on the other side? Doesn't really matter too much. So up here, there's more green. I haven't been looking at the balconies all that much. More green, and then yep, this is your standard house. Beige. Mostly beige is standard. It's just the least interesting and the least daring color, isn't it? Beige. And then up here, oh, this is interesting. There's some bright accents to the windows, and then there's a little bit of color down here, but otherwise mostly gray. How do I feel about the yellow and the slate color? Interesting. Not sure if the pink and the slate and the yellow. Anyway, so that's pretty cool. So having themes is good. I think having a concept to work with is good, especially with colors. If you remember when I did the exercise, I was trying to grapple with how to use these colors, and in the end, I kind of picked a theme for one or two of the apartments, and that turned out a bit better. So having an idea behind the colors certainly help, and we can see that Codbug certainly has a very coherent and well-developed concept here, and everything fits together quite well. All right, good. I didn't count the colors. I didn't count if there were all 16 colors there, but I'll trust Codbug. So what is the next exercise? I believe it's the mausoleum, right? Oh, we need to play with the lights a little bit if we're dealing with the mausoleum. So before we go inside, let's just see what he says. Actually, is it the mausoleum or is it somewhere else? Alright, exercise the mausoleum. I started this exercise knowing I wanted to fit as much detail into the ceiling as I could and have a sense of things towering over you, even despite the roof itself. Okay. For this, I ended up adding large arches to the main support pillars. In early designs, I had skylights above them, but I felt it drew more attention to them than was desired, so I went with windows on an extended wall of the ceiling to let in much less light. This made it so that this made it so that the attention wasn't pulled towards the windows or the arches, but you're still aware of their presence. Unfortunately, this made the corners of the lower floor near pitch black in spots, so I ended up remedying this with redstone torches, which give off very minimal amounts of warmer light, which is primarily there to prevent people from stumbling while walking through the ground level. I still left most of the pillars as dark as I could get away with so that the large skylit dome above the fountain would be seen as a sort of light at the end of the tunnel. The dome itself was lit from beneath so that at night when there was no sun coming through the skylight you'd have a similar effect. By the time I'd gotten the desired effect I wanted on the inside, the outside of the roof looked like a mess. It took a lot of detailing to cover up the bizarre mixture of shapes that were required for its construction. This exercise was completed second and is part of what made me dome happy on the rest of my work. Alright, so let's see the effects that he talks about. So let's just walk inside. Is it daytime? It's actually, let's just go time set day just to make sure. So at daytime we have I see. I see. So there's a little bit of lighting, just a tiny bit of lighting up there. And that silhouettes the arches against a little bit of light in the ceiling. So you can see the arches, but they're not really all that clear. But you can definitely see the light of the dome back there. Oops, wrong button. The light of the dome back there. and the light of the dome just comes in from the top and it kind of fills this area, and it highlights, of course, the little kind of obsidian monument thing here. And there's also a bit of light coming down highlighting the three, what are these things? I don't even know what they are. I presume there'd be words here kind of saying what the monument is about. So the three little articular spaces, the three little interior arches or the interior things, and then the rest of it is pretty much all dark. And he talked about how he wanted to make sure that this part down here wasn't completely pitch black, and so he put the redstone torches there. But otherwise, it's still quite dark down here. Interesting. So yep, so not that complicated. Although if you look back from here, there's like you can kind of have a bit of a glow in the corners, and then the ramp is silhouetted against the glow down there. Very interesting, very dramatic. Let's see how this works up here. So, oh, I see. So there's kind of windows on the sides. Surprisingly light up here, although you don't really notice it when you're in the middle, because everything is silhouetted against it. It's actually kind of light up here. And you can really see the detail in the arches. If you come up here, you can see all the structure there. So much detail, look at that. And I presume the other side is the same? Very fancy, very interesting. Somewhat Gothic. So the central nave and then the side, what do you call them? The aisles? So, and then the windows on the side. Somewhat Gothic in inspiration, I think. Let's just check what it means with the stuff on the ceiling. I think he did pretty well. There's like a roof, and then there's like spaces for the skylights at the side, and then there's a dome back here. I think he did pretty well cleaning this up. Yeah, the dome, and then the light I see. Alright, so that's pretty good. Let's just check what it looks like at night. There are fires up there. I don't know if it does anything for us. Let's go time set night. So at night, what do we see? So the dome is still lit. There's no more light coming in the side though. So the silhouetting is not as clear. There's a bit of night light coming in, night skylight coming in. And so now the central bit is still lit, but the light is no longer flooding down to the ground here. And there's also no light coming down the sides there. I'm not sure about the night version. The night version is very dark on the interior. Partly, I guess it's the limitations of the Minecraft lighting engine. I mean, at night it really emphasizes the dome, doesn't it? Whereas, during the day, when the light comes down and lights the space down here, then it really emphasizes the ground area here. But at nighttime, the light is only up there. I'm not sure about the night version of this. That's okay though. Let's just see this again. Time set day. Yeah, so I mean, with the light coming down from the sky, it's quite different. Maybe it's just a really dark space at night. Maybe you're just not supposed to come in here at night. It is very, very dark at night. Alright, let's go back outside. So that's very interesting. Very interesting. Let's go time set day again. I like this. I like how he managed to make this dark. And yet if you just kind of sidestep a little bit, make this light. And even though all of that is presumably open, it still manages to block enough of the light so that there's a clear difference between what you see here and what you see here. Very interesting. Alright, let's continue. So the next exercise, is it the park? I don't even remember my own exercises. Alright, so we got 5 is the mausoleum, and then 6 is the city park. Alright. This exercise for me was a bit of a mixed bag. I felt I accomplished a lot of what I wanted with it, but some of it didn't turn out to look as good in practice as I imagined it would. It's quite difficult. Like, parks are difficult, trees are difficult. Trees and landscape, because all the shapes are kind of organic and flowing, and everything kind of is complex shapes. And so yes, parks are very difficult. Um, and to recover, I may have overdone it with the details and overall scope of what exactly I was aiming for. I know I wanted to work with the natural contours of the land, but wanted to place all the vegetation by hand. So I first removed all the trees and then built a winding labyrinth of dirt trails throughout the whole area. I then planted trees in the sizes, shapes, and types I wanted in the areas between the trails. The inspiration was initially a natural but themed botanical garden that ended up bleeding more into a miniature golf course. Ha! I wanted the park to be divided into different sections that had trees and flowers that represented different biomes or ecosystems. Unfortunately, the flowers in Minecraft seemed to make everything feel kind of cluttered and noisy. I imagine this area might have worked better in real life than in the game. I did have fun with the design of the paths though, an experience which would come in handy in a later exercise. The paths are designed with joggers or hikers in mind. There are inclines and declines with multiple branches that lead through and to interesting locations. A water feature was built on top of a hill to create a waterfall, and understanding how erosion works, I knew it wasn't a very realistic placement, so I ended up including a locked area in a man-made cave below the water feature, which is designed as a place for a pump. Running further with that theme, I also included a semi-hidden gardening maintenance shed off the main path. During the initial landscaping, I'd extended the beach and created a plains area, which I thought might be a good place for families to gather and children to play. But after the rest of the park was completed, I didn't really feel like that area really implied it too well. So I threw in some picnic tables, grills, and a restroom, and a beach volleyball court. At this point, I figured I'd possibly gone a bit overboard with details, so I just stopped before I made things even more cluttered. Revisiting the park after later exercises, I now feel it's not as bad as I initially thought it was, but it definitely doesn't seem to mimic reality so much as it does a slice of fantasy theme park. Well, just from hearing that, I suspect you tried to fit too many things in. Maybe if you had like 2 or 3 fewer biomes, maybe. Because it sounds like you were trying to do a lot of things and it didn't really work because there's not enough space. And the thing with kind of parks is that they tend to be big. Parks tend to be really big things, and so it's not like the scale of a house and the scale of a park is quite different. And that might be something that got in the way. And if I just kind of fly up here for a minute, like if you just look at this from above and straight down, just look at the paths. Oh crap, clouds. Just look at how much of the area of the park is taken up by the paths. Like, you see how wide the path is there? So it's path there, path there, path there. A lot of it is paths. And that again suggests to me that you try to fit too much stuff in. Because there might be too many paths, given how big it is. Because in order for something to feel like nature, in order for something to feel natural, you need enough space between things, between built things, because you need enough kind of trees, for example, between the paths in order to feel like, wow, there's a lot of trees there. There's like a forest there, or there's like a bush there. So it needs to be thick and it needs to be dense enough to make it feel like it's a separate thing. So if we just kind of walk up here, or as you can see, kind of different biomes, different types of trees, different mushrooms here. But you can almost just kind of see like path and path and path. You can almost see all the way to the other side of the park. And so instead of a park with different biomes as you imagined it, I think it kind of turned into a big open space with not much differentiation between them, because you were trying to put in more biomes than the space allowed. Does that make sense? I don't know. I'm kind of half guessing. This is kind of my assessment, and you can disagree. So if you disagree, then by all means, kind of type in the comments and tell me you disagree. But it feels like that. You know, if you try to put in 2 or 3 fewer biomes and just kind of put thicker and denser trees in, then it would. Or, you know, in some areas have denser trees and then in some areas have more open spaces, then there'll be greater contrast between the biomes. How do you get back there? Hold on. I'm trying to, I see the space behind you and I can't figure out how to get back there. There's a bridge here. There's water here. And the path is here. Wait a minute. Can you not get back there? You can't get back there. Hold on. Let me just explore a little bit, if you don't mind. Alright, so back here, there's no path back here. But this is interesting though, like you've managed to put a waterfall in here. And these dense bushes. And there's hold on, wait a minute, there must be a way to get back here. There must be a way to get back here. Oh, I see. There's a tunnel. There's a tunnel underneath. Oh, I see. Okay, I get it. I get it. Alright, good. So, yeah. Maybe the paths are too wide? Maybe the paths can be more narrow? In order to, you know, just change the feel of the scale, just to make the roads or make the paths feel smaller, and therefore the empty spaces in between make them feel bigger. I don't know if that's a viable solution. I'm just kind of putting out ideas at the moment. But you know, the way we look at this, the trees are relatively evenly spaced. There's no like real dense clusters of trees. You don't kind of go underneath a canopy and just have a thick canopy of leaves above you, and then there's no open plains areas. So despite you trying to kind of create different biomes, it ended up all feeling very similar, right? I don't know. I mean, again, if you disagree, then feel free to say so. But this is what I'm getting out of it, is that despite you trying to do kind of different areas, they all feel similar. So once we get to this point, then it opens up into a plains area, as you said, and you kind of put these barbecue things in the plains area. And so this feels distinctly different because there's just no trees, right? There's a beach, and now this is the volleyball thing. The beach, and then there's also more built elements. So there's kind of tables and chairs and pavilions and all that sort of stuff. And so it feels distinctly different. But the rest of it, even though you use different flowers and even though you use different types of trees, it felt very similar. It felt very similar. Because all the trees are evenly spaced, are more or less evenly spaced, and they're more or less the same scale. So maybe you just need to put them closer together. Maybe, for example, the jungle needs to be so closely spaced together that when you're down here, you don't even see the sky anymore. Maybe it needs to be that. I guess to some extent, this... Okay, so this is this is characteristically different. So there's 3 areas. There's the trees, and then there's this jungle clearing, which kind of works, and then there's the plains area. But then you have a waterfall back there that was interesting, and you can't get to it. I mean, this is a difficult exercise. It is a difficult exercise. And I'm trying to kind of figure out how to make it work. Maybe fewer paths. For example, this particular path here, I'm not sure it adds very much. I mean, there's this. little frame, and then this down here. There's also not that many landmarks, right? There's this, and then there's the jungle clearing, and then all the stuff in the middle is very similar. Maybe we need a few more like landmarks, like kind of key structures that give an area identity. For example, maybe like there's this, which has potential, but maybe it's too small. And there's a bridge, and maybe the bridge has potential, but maybe that's too small. So something that makes an area unique, right? Because you talk about putting in the different trees and kind of having these different areas, but they need to be really they need to feel different. It seems like you tried to make them different, but somehow they still felt the same. So in order to make it feel different, there needs to be greater contrast, maybe different materials, maybe more emphasis on the structures, and as I said, maybe different densities in the trees and stuff like that. Anyway, I think this turned out reasonably well. Is it a custom tree? Did you make that tree by hand? You can't get this tree naturally, right? Yeah, so I think it turned out reasonably well. See, I think the contrast between this area and the rest, and the contrast between the jungle clearing at the back, I think that works well. So I think potentially you have some things here that are working, and it's just the big area in the middle that's not quite as differentiated as we not quite as differentiated as we would like, maybe. All right, I'll leave that there. And yeah. Also, there's no central area, is there? Like, there's no. If you look at the layout, there's one part, there's another part, like the circulation of it. I would suggest that there's more paths than is necessary here, because I mean there's a lot of places for you to walk, but again, I don't think there's enough stuff for you to see to justify quite this many paths. Maybe just one less path. So there's kind of one that goes around in a circle, and then maybe just one through the middle instead of two through the middle. Maybe that makes sense. And then have denser trees in some areas. All right, I'm gonna stop talking about that there. Hopefully, I'm not too judgmental. Trying to come up with ideas that are helpful. And if you disagree, or if you think it's helpful, then by all means, give me feedback about my feedback on your work. Interesting. But it's always the problems that are challenging, because when you kind of come up with something that doesn't work, then you learn. All right, let's move on. So the next one is the town square, right? I remember you saying that the town square is something that you worked on earlier. Yeah, a miniature golf course. I think that's one of the keys. The miniature golf course. Basically, a miniature golf course. What does that mean? It means it's too small, and it means it's too fake, right? It means it doesn't feel natural. It doesn't feel epic. It doesn't feel like nature. It feels like somebody's kind of turned it into a theme park. And you say that too, like it turns into a theme park. Like, what is a theme park? A theme park usually is things are too fake, and things are trying to be different, but it all feels like it's too cartoonish. And I mean, what's the opposite of mini golf? What's the opposite of theme park? It's epic. It's dense. Density and epicness and size, right? Like, what is the opposite of miniature golf? It's real golf, like it's big golf. So maybe it's just the things that you ended up with biomes that are too small. That's why I'm saying that. Alright, let's move on. Alright, exercise 7 is town square. There's actually not too much to say here, as this exercise ended up being more of an extension of the following exercise than anything. About all I can say is I think I did a decent job keeping the space as open as possible, while preventing it from seeming empty, mostly through materials on an otherwise flat surface. There is a lit-up fountain in the center, as well as a couple islands off to the side with shade and pieces to sit and some staircases that blend the road into the square. I decided not to focus much on lighting, as I wanted the square to be more of a daytime source of gathering, with the surrounding areas being more for the nightlife, but to me what ultimately makes the square works are the roads. Alright, continue to part 2. Does he actually mean continue in part 2? Okay, that's one of the roads. Let me just check the square. So he apparently did not think that he focused much on the square as much as he made it an extension of the roads, which is fair enough. Fair enough. I mean, he put a lot of work into the roads. The square, although it does show. It seems like a leftover thing, a little bit. Although it's not a huge problem. It doesn't say much though. I mean, when you talk about city squares in real life, you have to think about it kind of being a recreational space, but also occasionally an event space. I mean, imagine if an event happened here, like a rock concert, like a rock band decides to have a concert in your city. How would that happen? The fountain's there, so they kind of have to set up the stage like here, don't they? And then the people can gather around and watch the concert. It kind of works. I mean, it's kind of open enough for that to work. There's not too much to say about the town square. Yeah, although he does say that there are some trees around here, some seating areas. Where would I hang out if I came to the town square to meet someone? Would I say we'll meet at the fountain? Probably. I mean, the fountain is the unique structure, and it's obviously visible from all sides. So if you say, okay, let's go meet in the square, we'll meet at the fountain in the square, and then we can go hang out in other places. I think that works. I mean, to the extent that can happen, I think it works. Alright, let's move on to the roads, which is what he focused more on apparently. Exercise 8 roads. This was the unexpected gem of all the exercises for me, and where I probably learned the most. Chiefly that I apparently love the potentially boring task of building roads. Ha! The first thing I did when I saw the work was to measure the spaces provided and note their relation to the exiting lots, or to the existing lots. From this, I decided to go completely modular, like a toy racetrack. I built track pieces outside of town for every possible type of straight road and intersection I could think of. To take the most advantage of this method, I figured before I designed the actual surfaces of the road that I should set up wiring to power a network of streetlights from a single source. To prevent each track from seeming too prefabricated, I added decorations, which could be applied to specific track pieces such as gazebos and awnings. These decorations tied in heavily to the overall feel of my town square, essentially making the roads that surround the square a part of the square itself. To break up the visual monotony of traveling the road and give people a sense of how far they are walking, I used 3 materials to make a large, repeating geometric pattern, which varies depending on the type of intersection. The bridges leading to the park are made of wood to show some transition between the heavily constructed stone roads and the more natural dirt paths. The roads leading out of town, on the other hand, is as dull and cheap to manufacture as is possible for both practical reasons and to discourage visitors from leaving town too quickly. Overall, I'm happy with how my roads turned out. The only problem I see with them is that they don't seem as friendly to vehicles as they do to foot traffic. Well, that's okay, because there's no vehicles in Minecraft except for horses. So, if we just say these are Minecraft roads, then they're perfectly fine. I mean, would they work for vehicles? I think they would. I mean, there's no seriously sharp inclines or turns that are too bad, given the scale of the roads. And I think they'll be fine. I think it'll be fine. I mean, the interesting thing about this sort of thing is, if you go to medieval towns in Europe, like you'll see how they try to fit vehicles into cities that were designed around foot traffic, and they don't really. Some of them don't really work. Like Venice doesn't work for cars at all. There's no cars in Venice. But it's interesting how they managed to make it work anyway. So I don't think it's too much of a problem if it seems more pedestrian friendly than vehicle friendly. It's probably what we want to do with our cities anyway. As for the modularity of it, I don't know if anybody saw. So I made videos of me preparing the exercises, which I kind of posted a long time ago. And so the whole city is actually laid out on a square grid. It's kind of like a hidden square grid that I try to not to emphasize. So the reason the modules work for the roads here is because the roads actually follow a grid, and so there's actually grid squares. And Codbug figured that out, and he designed kind of modules for the roads based on that square grid. So in the real world, where real cities are not necessarily built on grids, except for New York, as a prime example. So except for cities like New York, a lot of cities don't have square grids, so this kind of modular system would not work in that case, because there's kind of diagonals and curves, and they're all freeform and not necessarily following regular shapes. So he said that he's actually enjoyed the roads the most. I mean, he has turned it into something quite interesting. So typically roads are quite boring. If you just kind of go outside your front door and look at a road, it's quite boring. But he has turned it into this very interesting kind of geometric pattern here, which, I mean, he made it interesting, which is good, which is a good thing. I mean, he turned a potentially boring thing into something that's actually kind of interesting. And he's made it work, so I like it. I like the patterns, and I like the little kind of pavilion things, which makes it gives each street a little bit more character. So, for example, this covered street here is different in character, like from the street next to it, which is not covered, for example. And there's these pavilion things, as he said. Yeah, I mean it's good. It's good. I mean, there's not much else for me to say, I don't think. He's managed to turn something usually quite boring into something quite interesting, and quite enjoyable to just kind of walk around these streets. But it's great. Maybe he's right. Maybe that's a good enough reason for why the square is not, or why the square doesn't need to be as interesting, because the streets around it are interesting enough. Is he right? I'm not sure. Maybe. There could be other things, like here on the grass maybe. I'm not too concerned. Not too concerned about that. Alright, so the roads he's managed to do something really interesting with. Alright, number 9, transition. This is a complex one, a difficult exercise. So from where the two roads lead off past the houses and towards the monument site, I wanted to make sure they connected so I could turn the transition into a miniature square, or circle more literally, just below the entrance to the monument. Apart from the difficulties I had getting both roads from different elevations and inclines to line up, I needed to create the control point for the lighting network in the previous exercise. As my monument was intended to be an observatory with a museum and planetarium, I figured the transition could include this mechanism as a sort of practical exhibit. I imagine such a thing would probably have a plaque explaining how it works or who made it possible, but as Minecraft doesn't really have anything suitable for that, I decided to put a slab down and let people use their imagination. The mechanism is behind the glass, but can be interacted with from above for test purposes to reverse the redstone current so that the lights come on in the day and off at night. The end of the road itself blends into a large circular area with staircases leading up to the ground level of the monument, with a simple, well-lit fountain in the center. This is where I begin to go crazy with circular patterns. Calculating the angles which the steps needed to be at along the circle was particularly problematic and involved a lot of work in image editors to get the correct arrangement of pixels. Even after all that, it doesn't look nearly as perfect as it should, but I figure so long as there's symmetry, it shouldn't be too noticeable. The path to the monument is dimly lit, partly so the glow of the monument behind it stands out, and partly for reasons outlined in the next exercise's notes. Alright, so that's the transition, and in fact his transition starts here, because as he says, he wants this road to line up in elevation with the next road. So in order for that to happen, he needs to kind of make sure that both the roads end up at the same height by the end of it. So you can see how this road starts stepping up here. In the original exercises, they don't step up. They just kind of stay flat all the way through to the back. So he's made these roads step up to here, and then step up some more to here. And then at this point, they come together into the entry fountain. I don't agree with the fountain. Anyway, let's just come back to here first. So there's the sensor for the lighting system, and I guess the redstone's underneath here. So this just joins up like that. Alright, that's not too complicated. I would have lowered the fountain in the middle, because this literally just blocks the view. Because there's, look, that's the grand entrance, and from here the fountain just blocks it. I would have lowered the fountain. I would have made the fountain maybe like a half circle, so that you can kind of see through here. Maybe actually I can adjust this to show you what I mean. I don't want to destroy it. I want to destroy your map at this point. Alright, let's just check the staircase. So the staircase is a circular staircase going up. I mean, it's as good as you can get it. I mean, you can't get it much better than this in Minecraft, given that we're working with giant blocks. So then you come up to here, and then there's your monument. Yeah, I don't know, like this. From this angle, you literally can't see the monument. And it's not... I don't know, I think you should have... I mean, I would have lowered the fountain here, lowered the waterfall, I mean. Alright, let's just continue with his description of the monument. Maybe he thinks it's a good idea, I'm not sure. And then the next one, exercise 10. As briefly touched upon in the previous exercise, the monument I went with was a museum with a planetarium and 2 observatory towers. For practical and realistic reasons, lighting had to be strictly controlled to ensure that the areas around the observatories were not well lit. This is why the street lighting terminates at this transition. The brightest point on the outside of the monument is a ring of light that illuminates the base of the main dome that houses the planetarium. The rest of the lighting at the night comes from inside the museum complex itself. The overall design, while loosely inspired by the Griffith Observatory, makes heavy use of rounded shapes. The museum itself wraps around the circle of the transition with a half circle that connects the main building with the 2 observatories. This essentially envelops you within the monument before you even set foot into the building itself. The main foyer is decorated with a Foucault pendulum and houses the front desks, queues to the planetarium, and passageways into the exhibit halls. The exhibit halls required some creative planning to house certain exhibits along the curved walls in a neater, straight-walled fashion. Beyond the halls are the observatories, one which is open to the public and active, another which is closed and has the dome aperture sealed. Both observatory domes were arranged at different angles and configurations to better show off the architecture from the outside, though in reality this would not be an uncommon sight. By size and complexity alone, the star attraction of the monument is the planetarium. The interior is a large semi-sphere with an angled horizon that lines up with the angle of the seating, as well as concealed indirect lighting to simulate the horizon of our atmosphere. Unfortunately, there was no good way to simulate projected stars on the dome, so the view has to be taken as generic ambient lighting in between shows. Ultimately, though, I think the transition from light on the horizons to near pitch black captures the feel of a planetarium dome really well. Seating is typically semicircular in most planetariums, but that wasn't really an option, so I just had to sort of imply the angles by the arrangement of the seating. The projector is in the center of the room, and two podiums sit near the front for narrators and lecturers. The entire thing is enclosed in a second outer semisphere which transitions into a more solid cylindrical structure supported by buttresses and attached to the foyer. In order to even begin construction on a monument, I decided to first fill in the cut-out hill that was suggested as a foundation space. Then I got a 2D 1:1 pixel map of the entire area and used primarily MS Paint to plan out half of the basic floor plan, the other half being mirrored. Then I laid out the blueprint blocks at the intended ground level using colored wool. From there it was just a matter of building walls, filling in floors, and so on. Structurally, it's a bit unrealistic as the base is completely hollow, but if you break a block and go beneath the floor, you can see some remnants of the original blueprint wool blocks. I'm both happy and surprised by how well it turned out in the end. And while the dome for the planetarium is an impressive structure, I like that the monument itself isn't exactly tall or imposing. It's open and welcoming as anything knowledgeable related probably should be. Sounds awesome. So he went and did a proper plan for this sort of thing and built it with great detail and attention. So let me just go time set night, so just to see what it means. Oh, I see. So the light ends here, and there's like a glow at the base of the dome, and otherwise most of the light comes from the building itself, so the building kind of glows from within, right? Let me just fly around it before we go inside. So the whole thing is kind of on massive foundations, and he filled in the giant hole in the ground that I put in, and there's buttresses on the outside, which is cool. Buttresses on the outside holding up the dome. Oh, there's a line of the sea lanterns at the base of the dome. I see how that works. And then all that, they're like, cool. And then there's light leaking out of the slabs. That's not his fault, that's Minecraft being weird. Alright, so then you're never supposed to see that anyway, because you're not supposed to fly around. So let's go in and see the interior. So we have main entrance. It's pretty white, isn't it? It's the main entrance and the Foucault pendulum. If you don't know what this is, it proves the world is round or something, I believe. Anyway, it measures the rotation of the Earth, if I remember right. So, a pendulum usually just swings back and forth, but when you have a giant pendulum like this, the thing will swing around in a circle, and that demonstrates the rotation of the Earth or something. I don't remember exactly how it works, but I think that's what it is. So this is like a... Let's go to the sides first. What is this? Okay, planetarium is in there. So to the side, here's a town map. The lit wall here should be a map. You may need to reload to fix it. No, it's a map. There's a map right there. Alright, so there's the town. There's a massive dragon. The park. And then there's the monuments. A lot of curves. Curves are difficult in Minecraft, and good on him for making that work. Alright, well there you go. And then over here, we have some displays. Oh, I see what he means. So he's trying to put in displays in a curving corridor. And it seems like he did a pretty good job of fitting that in. Alright, and then here we have a giant telescope. Or a model of a telescope. Not that you can have a telescope in Minecraft. Cool. Awesome. Is it only one level? It looks like it's only one level. He did say there's stuff underneath the ground. I don't know if I should sneak down here to have a look. I see. So there's wool. He said there's wool down here. Okay, there's a bit of wool down here, and he's kind of measuring out the plan, right? And then you're kind of building up from there. Interesting. All right, well, let's not mess around down here too much. So you can see the see how he laid out the geometry of the building. All right, let's just continue up here. And then the other side is apparently not open to the public. There's a thing here, not sure what that's supposed to be, some sort of display. More display things, but there's nothing actually on display. And then this is also actually a closed to the public. And it's basically similar to the other side. Alright, so there's two observatories, there's kind of two telescopes pointing up into the sky. And then back here there is the planetarium with lines and tickets. Hold on. So here we have registration desk, exit only. Okay, information desk, alright. So there's like a entry, and then there's dark staircase, and the planetarium with lecture-like seating, and then there's this thing. A projector. Ooh, look at that. Impressive. I mean, circles are difficult. But this is really well done. This is really well done. And then, so there's desk up here for lectures and then exit. Alright, great. Great, amazing. So much detail. And everything is exactly as he intends. Great job. Great job. I still disagree with the way the waterfall blocks the view of the front of the building when you're down here. I still think the waterfall should be lowered in the middle so you can kind of see up. But maybe it's not a big deal. I'm not sure. Okay, so let's move on to exercise 11, which is the cleanup. Let's see what he has to say about that. In fact, does it actually go all the way to page 50? So exercise 11 is cleanup, and this is basically just finish off and then just kind of finish everything and make any changes you like. There's no real objective to it. He says, fortunately, I'd been taking these notes before this exercise's video went up, so this exercise probably won't take so long to complete. In regards to actual touch-ups to my project, I actually sort of completed some exercises out of order. That's fine. And as a result, when the example videos came up, I ended up revisiting a lot of my work on my own. In between projects that were in proximity to one another, I'd also end up backtracking a bit to fix little things here and there to try and tie everything together. The city park and roads exercises to me kinda had some grey area between them that could be classified as general landscaping. I ended up extending the beaches all around a tiny bit to make them a bit more realistic and to kind of provide some good views along the coastal area. As the beach was, the roads stood out too much and were kind of imposing when viewed from the coast. Stretching the land out a bit from them and adding trees wherever I could fit them seemed to help. The docks were also kind of a mess to work with once my roads ended up there. I didn't want to spend too much time remaking them or anything. But some minor expansion was made to them to work with the little circle outside the market area. The whole time I was thinking about how if goods were shipped here, they need paths to follow to access both buildings. The circle provided a large staging area where cargo could be dropped off without impeding traffic too much. The statue also had a similar problem to the roads of being a bit more imposing than desired. Granted, I may have gone a bit overboard on my statue. To help alleviate this, I extended the coast around it a bit, added some walkways, and placed some more trees. Being from California, I'm always kind of disappointed that Minecraft has poor excuses for decorative palm trees. Well, Mojang is in Sweden, so there's no palm trees there. Since I wanted them along my beach though, I just ended up building my own palm trees from scratch. While I'm not sure whether or not this would qualify as landscaping, many of the benches and trash cans throughout the town were added at around the same time. It's kind of landscaping. They started off as something I just wanted in my park, but it seemed to make sense to place them all around town to sell the effect that the roads aren't really made for heavy vehicle traffic, so much as foot traffic. And with the effort placed into landscaping and tying scenery together, it seemed logical to have places to rest and just take in the sights. While I'd also like to take the time to focus and take the time and focus of this exercise to tidy up my park a bit, I'm kinda afraid I might never finish it if I start. Yeah, it's one of those things that you can tinker with forever. Suffice to say, it is the one exercise I'm the least confident about my execution of. Another minor regret I have is the lack of greenery in the town itself. While I did my best to plant trees in the areas just outside of town, I would have liked to have more trees and shrubs along the streets. My road designs and the limited space to work with sort of prevented that though. Speaking of the trees, I found I had to use some sort of mask. I had to use some to sort of mask the mess that I made of the area between the apartment and the transition to the monument. The difference in elevation there was pretty annoying to work with. I probably should have started with my roads leading towards the monument at lower altitude. Originally, I tried just a straight slope for the area between the two roads, but it looked too artificial and it seemed like a terrible view for the people in the apartment. What I ended up with is a result of trying to make the area appear untouched by man, despite being heavily tweaked by hand to look that way. Fortunately, by pure coincidence, the apartment facing the big mound of earth is the earth-themed apartment. After the fact that I also noticed that some of the other apartments also had appropriate views related to the themes. Air faces a relatively open area, while water has a clear view of the fountain in the square. None of this was intentional so much as a neat coincidence. Perhaps my placement of the buildings was subconsciously inspired by the surroundings, although I'm probably just overthinking things at this point because I'm running out of ideas of what to write about. All in all, I enjoyed these exercises and gained a lot of insight, especially from the infrastructure lessons. I revisited a lot of my older works just to put in some decent roads and other methods of transportation. Space is another thing I've learned a lot about. Many of my older builds I've noticed are probably smaller and more compact than they should be. Even my monument I feel could probably benefit from being a little larger, and the roads could definitely be much wider. But given the limitations, I'm still very happy with how the entire look and feel of the town turned out. I know it's not entirely a realistic design for a town, but if I can apply what I've learned here to future towns I build, I know they'll turn out better than any of my previous works. All that's left to say at this point is thanks for the time and effort put into creating this course. I'd be happy to participate in any future projects along these lines if you ever decide to do any more. That is awesome. Hey, learning is awesome. It's always better to learn because you don't want to be stupid. I feel like I'm insulting people when I say that, but it's true. Being smart is better than being stupid. So every time you learn something new, that's great. You're winning. So he talks about how this area here is a bit fake, but try to make it look natural. It's okay. I don't think it's too much of a problem. The thing is, like, you don't really see much of it anyway. Like, it's just kind of a back area that you don't really notice. So I don't think that's too much of a problem. Although, like, when you're designing it and when you're actually building it, I can see how you're just looking at it up close and you're like, this just looks weird. But when you're not the designer, when you're like me and just coming in as a tourist, you don't really notice it. So it's not a big deal. So he also talked about how he extended the beaches in the front and he planted more trees, or the palm trees. I see. These are palm trees. Cool. Okay, I get it. So there's palm trees and he extended the beaches. He also extended this area out here a little bit. More trees to... Oh, I see. So those trees were not there initially. And in fact, he forgot to plant grass up here. And those trees kind of... they mask the statue a little bit just to make the statue slightly less imposing. And then there's palm trees at the front. I see how that works. Let's just go time set day. Alright, so the trees, it's difficult to imagine what it looks like without the trees. But if you just try to imagine it without the trees, then there'll just be buildings in front. I mean, not buildings in front, but there'll be nothing in front blocking the buildings. and so then I guess it will look less friendly because it's just there's less detail in front, and so the trees make it look less less monolithic, I guess, and slightly softer. I mean, it provides a little kind of a screen in front, so it softens the impact of the buildings. He says he wants more greenery around the roads. Yes, I mean, if I remember right, in my own exercises, I managed to kind of put shrubs at least along the side roads, which Codbug did not do here. Although it seems okay. It seems okay. Maybe like here, it'd be nice to have a little bit of grass or a bit of shrubbery, around the residences because people live here, right? I mean, there's enough. I think there's enough grass, enough trees on this side, though. So yeah, maybe he means at the back here. I mean, there is a bit of it's a bit dry back here. it's a bit sterile back here. There's no plants. I mean, he managed to leave some space around here, for example, for a bit of grass. And he personally says that he is the least confident about the park. Yeah, I agree. I agree that, it might be the part where the most work could be done. But, as we understand, as he understands it, and as I understand, it's a big project, and you can tinker with this park for a long, long time. Hopefully some of my comments are helpful, though. I'm not sure. Anything else to say about this? No, not too much. He says that maybe the monument could be bigger. I mean, monuments could always be bigger. You can always make things bigger, but just consider how much time you have to spend on this thing, and maybe don't make it any bigger. Just to maintain your own sanity, right? Alright, so that's the end of our little tour of Codbug's exercises. I don't really have too much more to say, I don't think. I mean, it's interesting to see different versions and kind of how different people approach the problems that we set up. And so again, if you have your exercises completed, then feel free to send them in to me. There's instructions in the last video of the main lecture series. Codbug also says that I'm allowed to put the link for this save file for you guys. So if you look in the video description, you can find the link to his map there. Any last words, any final words for me before I close up? I don't think so. I'm glad that Codbug feels that he's learned a lot of useful things. And that's always good. It's always good to learn, as I say. Alright, I guess I'll end this here, and feel free to send yours in if you finish yours. I don't know if I said this in the previous videos, but if you feel like that your work is not as impressive as other people's, don't worry about it. Just everything helps. Every new idea that we see is helpful. I mean, if you think that yours is much, much better, send it in. If you think that yours is not as good, send it in, because we learn from everything. We learn from successes, and we learn from mistakes, and we learn from failures. So everything is a learning experience. So, we're not judging you personally based on what you send in. It's more that the more different variations that we see, then the more we learn and the more we understand. So don't feel like, oh, my work is not good enough, I'm not going to send it in. Don't do that because well, I mean, if you really don't want to send it in, then I guess don't. But it's always helpful. It's only helpful to see more examples, regardless of whether you think it's a good example or a bad example. I mean, Codbug, as he said, he thinks the park is not as good, and I agree, it's not. In some areas it works, in some areas it doesn't work as well, but we learn from analyzing that just as much as we learn from analyzing the good things and the things that really work. Like, the colors he did really well with, and I agree he did really well with. And so we learn from both things that work and things that don't work. So don't worry about it. If you wanna learn, just if you wanna help others learn, then send stuff in. Alright, I'm gonna stop rambling there, and I'll see you guys in future videos.